Recording in progress. Very good. Right. Welcome back to Tefilah. Last time we finished Matzor and Alanissim because we were in Hanukkah. But before that, we finished Tachanun. So what comes after Tachanun? Huh? Ashrei. Ashrei uva Letzion. Now, at this point, we've finished our Tefilah. Our Tefilah meaning the Amidah. Tefilah is the prayer, meaning the Amidah, which is the main prayer of the day. Of the Tefilah is the Amidah. We've finished that. We've taken our 3 steps back. We've done our Tachanun, which is, if you remember, was that bolt-on to the Tefilah. At the end of the Tefilah, it was almost like, it's rude to sort of just run away. So you do these extra supplications, this Tachanun. And now, actually, we're done. And if you were my kids when they were young, they were definitely done by now because they were itching to get out of here. By the time we got to Letzion and they'd gone through Chazoras Hashatz and all that stuff, and they'd done Tachanun, they couldn't wait to get out. So I just drove me cracker. So he's like, "Come on, get out of there." And so I let them take their tefillin off after Letzion. They were allowed to say Ashrei and Letzion to themselves, yes, like they did. And then they could take their tefillin off and they could go. But we all feel a bit like that, I think, when we get to Ashrei Letzion, we're nearly done. So what's Ashrei Letzion all about? Why is it there? Could somebody bring me down, please, a Brachot, volume 1, which is probably right at the top on the right-hand corner.
Also, we've already said Ashrei.
We've already said it
again. So
we've already said it, correct. I also need, when you've got that, Charlie, I also need a sota. Yeah, it's always the very end one. So the question is, why are we saying Ashrei again? And what is uva Letzion? Who knows what Kedusha D'Sidra is? Anybody ever heard that word? Those words?
is it?
It's the Kedusha that's in uva Letzion.
Okay, yeah. How do you know that?
Because I know the text. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. You say Kadosh,
So
Kadosh.
why is it called Kedusha D'Sidra? And where have you seen that from? Thank you, Charlie. Where have you seen the words Kedusha D'Sidra and what does it mean? Okay.
Can't remember.
Sidra comes to do with order?
Sidra doesn't mean sitting, no, but I know what you mean.
Kadosh, 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 is it, Johnny?
It is part of Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Where have you seen the words Kedusha D'Sidra?
Haggadah.
What page are you on there,
Interesting,
David?
said that, yeah.
I'm on Letzion.
What page?
Sorry, 102.
Look at the top of the page. On the left-hand side. No, the right at the top of the page of 102.
Kedusha D'Sidra.
You ever noticed that before?
No.
Where?
No, right. Now have a look immediately above Sota. David, have look immediately above uva Letzion. What do you see?
Kedusha D'Sidra.
Right. Have you ever seen that before?
I'm sure I have. It's
Never. Exactly. It's there on the page. It's probably not in the Sac Sidor, and it's probably not in the singers, but it's definitely in the Rinat Yisrael. Yeah. I looked this morning. It's not in the art scroll either. But Kedusha D'Sidra. Huh? No, Kedusha D'Sidra is mentioned. Sorry.
On the bet.
49. I want Mem Tet. Bring them both. And then we'll be sure. Thank you. Kedusha D'Sidra is, well, we know what Kedusha is. D'Sidra means in order.
Order, yeah.
Okay, Kedusha D'Sidra. It's the Kedusha in order. And that is what that's uva Letzion's official title.
Johnny, the notes in the article that I've got underneath, Letzion, it says the most important part is Kedusha D'Sidra.
Okay. So it does say it in the article. It doesn't give it the heading, no?
No, it doesn't give a heading. No, it's at the bottom of the page.
It's the footnote. Okay, so Art Scroll's got it in the footnote. So, there is a Gemara.
It's also a footnote.
In this
Is there a
one.
footnote in
Yeah,
there as well?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so we have come across this Kedusha D'Sidra, even subconsciously. Those of you who use the Rinat Yisrael, thank you very much indeed. Lovely. Those of you who use the Rinat Yisrael will have seen that Kedusha D'Sidra every day and it's not impinged on your consciousness. Mine neither. Although I checked my Rinat Yisrael and it doesn't have it in. I've got a Nusach Ashkenaz Livnei Chul, which is a rarity these days to find a Rinat Yisrael for foreigners. Anyway, we have finished our Tefilah, and it's almost like we don't want to leave. So it's almost like Chazal have said, I can't let you go. You've got to say a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. So let's talk about the Ashrei first of all. There's a Gemara in Brachot. Just put this over there, if you don't mind, out of the way. Come back to that in a minute. There's a Gemara in Brachot, Amud Daf Dalad Amud Bet 442, and it says like this. I just have to find it now. Right. It says, right. It says, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Avina. And it says here, Kol ha'omer Tefilah David b'chol yom. Anybody who says the Tehillim that begins with Tefilah David, 3 b'chol yom, every day, shalosh pa'amim, 3 times, muftach lo, it's promised to him. What's he promised, Frank? Pretty much. Shahu ben ha'olam haba. It's promised to you, according to Rabbi Elazar, that if you say Ashrei 3 times a day, you are guaranteed Olam Haba. That's a pretty good guarantee, no?
So why don't they put one in Marav instead of 2 in Shafar?
Okay, very good question, Charlie. Very good question. Well, the obvious answer to that comes to my mind is that Mariv is a Reshut. You don't have to say Mariv, okay? The question is, why did they put it here? There's a Gemara that says you say Ashrei 3 times a day. We've said it once already in Sukkah D'Zimra, and we're going to say it again at Mincha. Let's say I'm right about Mariv, it's a Reshut, so we're not going to put it there because somebody might choose not to say it.
Wouldn't it have then been better to put it right at the end of the service to make sure everybody stays?
Okay, well, I must tell you, I'll just say it out loud for the people on the recording on Zoom. Jeff said, wouldn't it be better to put it right at the end so everybody stays? I have a theory about the way the davening was put together. For mourners Kaddish, you've got to be there almost right at the beginning, right, Frank? Because you've got to say your first Kaddish Drabonon, and you've got to stay right till the end because there's the Kaddish at the end of Ashrei. So I think the whole Kaddish business was along those lines.
But
who put it together?
Get into heaven,
Yeah.
though,
Which rabbis put it together?
Whoever put it together, the Anshe Knesset Gdola. I reckon that they thought, you know what, in the 21st century, there's going to be people who are mourners and who are only going to come to shul for that one reason, and that's to say Kaddish, present company excluded, of course. They're only going to come to say Kaddish, so we're going to make sure that they're here for the whole of davening, stay at the beginning and at the end. I'm being cynical, but it's...
Richard, the principal Kaddish, the only Kaddish, or the main Kaddish was the one after Aleinu anyway.
The others, all the add-ins.
Actually, the principal Kaddish is before Borchu, after Yishtabach, which is why the mourner tries to take over at least at Yishtabach, because the main Kaddish is actually,
Even though it's Chatzi.
Chatzi, and then the Kaddish Tiskabel. Okay, remember that mourner's Kaddish was only introduced. Have we done mourner's Kaddish in this? Did we do it? As
I think
in detail, I don't remember. If we did, none of us can remember it. If we didn't, well, I'll have to do it. The mourner's Kaddish was only introduced because people couldn't learn Torah, right? So what do you do? Le'ilui nishmat, somebody, you learn, right? The Hamain Am, the average person, couldn't learn. So instead, they instituted that they would say this prayer, which is all about what? Elevating God's name, Yit Gadal v'Yit Gadash Shemei Rabbah, okay? And that was in lieu of the learning on behalf of the neshama of the deceased. So although Kaddish Yatom is Kaddish Yatom, the real Kaddish is the Kaddish before Baruch Hu and the Kaddish Titkabel after Uva Letzion. So why
They didn't start learning, these guys, till 11 o'clock in the morning, to be honest. So they didn't mind learning, davening a long time.
Well, that's possibly true.
Yeah.
That's possibly true. So we know from the Gemara that it's a good thing to say Ashrei 3 times. The question is, why is it plonked here? Okay, and the answer that is, we don't really know. We don't really know. So he says here, Rav Ezra Bick says like this. The first element of this section is Ashrei. Most commentators offer no explanation for its location here, preferring just to rely on the statement in Brachot 4b that we've just read. Since Ashrei is recited in the beginning of Shacharit and before Mincha, there is a need for a third recitation, and so it was added at the end of Shacharit. Not a very good explanation, he says, but we'll have to leave it at that because he hasn't found one.
Just going back to my original idea, were the prayers after Ashrei add-ons, or were they part of the?
After this Ashrei,
Yeah.
they're add-ons.
Because maybe when this was put in, those weren't added on, so this was the end, if you see what I mean. If those
It's been added on after.
Oh, you
the add-on.
mean was the Letzion added on after Ashrei?
Well,
No,
no,
I didn't
I'm saying
understand
that
the question.
Ashrei was originally the end, but then they've added on other
No,
bits.
Ashrei and Uva Letzion were added on together
Yeah.
as
But then Aleinu and
Aleinu separately, but Ashrei and Uva Letzion, Aleinu separate. Ashrei, Lamnatseach, and Uva Letzion are a unit. Okay, they're a unit which were added on together. Now, it seems that the main part of Ashrei, Lamnatseach, and Uva Letzion is actually Uva Letzion. Okay, that's the main part of it. But since we were adding it on, they put Ashrei in at the same time. The main part here is this thing called Kedusha D'Sidra. That's why I wanted Sota here, because there's a Gemara in Sota 49b. I think it's 49b, or is it 49? Yeah, 49a, which says like.
49A, yeah.
Let me see if I can find it. There's a really miserable Gemara here. Just have to try and find it. Here we go. There's a miserable Gemara that says like this. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Mishum Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, Miyom Shecharav Beit Hamikdash, from the day that the Beit Mikdash was destroyed, Ein Yom She'ein Bo Klala. There's never been a day without a curse. In other words, every single day is cursed since the destruction of the temple. And he goes on and says, I'm a Rava. Rava says like this. B'chol yom v'yom, meruba kilalato mishel chaveiro. Every day is more cursed than the previous day. What a miserable Gemara, right? That says every single day is cursed.
Very optimistic.
You know, and the curses get worse every day. That's what the Gemara says. says kilalato shel kol yom meruba mizu shel etmol. The curses of today are worse than yesterday's. And he gives a pasuk. He quotes a pasuk in Devarim. Baboker tomar. This is in the Tochacha. In the Tochacha. Baboker, in the morning, tomar, you will say, mi yitain erev. Oi, I wish it was evening. Uba erev, and in the evening, tomar, you'll say, mi yitain boker. Oh, I wish it was the morning. In other words, you're not satisfied with anything. In the morning, you want it to be evening. In the evening, you want it to be morning. This is a tochacha. It's telling us that you'll be in such a terrible state during this tochacha that that you'll wish it, whatever it is, you'll wish it's something else. And then he goes on to say, what does it mean in the evening you'll wish it was morning? You'll wish it was high boker. Which boker, which morning meeting? Ilema boker de la machar. If you'll say, well, I wish it was tomorrow morning, okay, well, that's no good. Because how do you know how that's going to be? Maybe that'll be worse. So what does it mean? It means, I wish it was this morning. So in other words, the evening, in the morning, it's so bad that you want it to be the evening. And by the evening, it's so bad, you wish it was the morning, which you already thought was terrible. In other words, it's a dreadful Gemara, this, right?
This guy must have been on
It was
something.
happy, right? Not a happy guy, right? So then the Gemara says, since the curses get worse every single day, Alma, we see, how can the world exist? How can the world go on like this? If every day is worse than the last, can't go on.
Because you're here,
Right?
Johnny.
Koloma. So it says, in other words, in what merit does the world continue despite what we've just said? And here's our bit. Answers the Gemara. Kedusha D'Sidra. Right? Bizchut zeh shekol Yisrael omrim Segue Kedusha ve'et hatargum shela. In the zechut that all of Israel, now that's important when I say all of Israel, I'll come back to it in a minute. In the zechut that all of Israel say the Seder Kedusha, the order of Kedusha, with its translation.
Where's the translation?
We'll see in a minute.
Into Aramaic?
Yes.
Yeah.
V'ayehei Shemei Rabbah da'agadata. And the Yehei Shmei Rabbah that we, in the Kaddish that will say after the drasha, the Kaddish of the Drabanan after the drasha on the Shabbos. Shekol ha'am hayu mitkabtzim lishom'a. Why that particular Kaddish is so important? Because everybody used to come to listen to the drasha. Not like here where everybody goes out when the drasha starts, right? Everyone used to come to listen to the drasha. After the drasha, there'd be a Kaddish. So it would be a Kaddish that what everybody was saying. This is the secret of...
Wait a minute, even the people who weren't Avelim?
Yes, no, all the people that were there, yes, you would say Kaddish Rabbanon. No.
So why doesn't everybody say Kaddish Rabbanon?
No, because now Kaddish Rabbanon has become part of has been attached on to Kaddish Yosem. It's not Kaddish Yosem, Kaddish Rabbanon. So, so what this Gemara is saying is, if it wasn't for the fact that we had Uval Letzion, and everybody says Uval Letzion, and everybody says a Kaddish Rabbanon after the drasha, then the world wouldn't continue. That is how important, says the Gemara, this section of Uval Letzion. So me sending the kids out was absolutely the wrong thing to do. I didn't know, right? So we're nearly finished. Let them go already. It's driving me mad, right? So it seems from this Gemara that this Kedusha D'Sidra, Uval Letzion, is absolutely vital. Now, what's so important about it is the translation, it seems. Okay? Rashi explains over here in this Gemara, Rashi explains that the whole Kedusha D'Sidra was instituted so that the Jews, Bnei Israel, would learn some Torah after davening. What do we do here after davening?
Go home.
We have a halacha. We go home. Such a schmerel. In between finishing Tefilah and going home, Philip, we
You
do
don't hear a
it.
shachrit. He does not hear a shachrit.
No, he doesn't know what goes on. We learn a halacha, right? And that's a fairly widespread custom to do that. And it turns out that Uva Letzion is exactly that. And it's the order of the Kedusha was only instituted so that all of Israel would be engaged in a little bit of Torah every day after the davening. So when you recite the where's Mr. there? There you go. When you get to Uva Letzion and you say V'ata kadosh 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 Adonai Tzevaot Maloch al Aretz Kavodo, then what do you do? You say it in Aramaic. Umakablin dain min dain va'amrin kadesh b'shmei meroma ila'a beit shchintei kadesh al ara ovad gvirotei kadesh leolam leolamei amaya. Right? What does that mean? It means kadosh kadosh kadosh.
And you learn
it's the Aramaic translation. Now, why do we have the Aramaic translation? Because back in the day,
they didn't know English.
back in the day, that was the lingua franca, right? So really, if we are to fulfill if you are to fulfill the concept of Kedusha D'Sidra, and if we are to fulfill the purpose of Uva Letzion as stated in the Gemara, we should really translate it, not into Aramaic, because we understand Aramaic less than we understand Hebrew. We should translate it into a language that we understand. Now, if you understand Hebrew, all well and good. If you don't understand Hebrew, Yiddish, Ladino, whatever you like, Flemish, whatever it is that you understand, right? That's what you should be doing. Because the whole point of it is that we should learn a little bit of Torah. Since it applies to all of Israel, that's the point. He says in the Gemara, it says, B'zchut zeh shekol Yisrael. It's not just the scholars. Back in the day, only the scholars understood Hebrew. Those average folk, the Am Haratzim, right? The Amei Haaretz, they only understood Aramaic. That was their lingua franca. They didn't understand Hebrew. Yeah. So if you want all of Israel to learn your bit of Torah, you have to do it in the lingua franca. Yeah. Right? And that, it appears, is the reason. First of all, Frank, he had his hand up first. Yes, Frank.
Yeah. What it's actually suggesting in the Siddur here, not my idea, is that given the importance of the Uva Letzion and this additional study that we're doing, that the concept of putting Ashrei in front was the preparatory prayer, and it's actually the words at the beginning which says Ashrei Yeshvei Beitecha.
Very nice.
That makes us want to stay in your house to carry on with the learning.
Very nice. I'm going to write to Rabbi Bick and give him that.
Suggested here
by Rabbi Sachs. Well, okay. Why we're not surprised.
It just fits
beautiful. That fits in very, very nicely. And I'm sure that Rav Bick will be very interested to hear that, because he says, I really have no idea why Ashrei is on here. But that would make one second. Let me just develop this a little bit more, because that's really nice. So if we say Kedusha D'Sidra is so important that it, as it were,
supersedes,
keeps the world going. Because if it weren't for Kedusha D'Sidra, according to this Gemara in Sota, every day will be so rotten, more rotten than the previous day, that the world wouldn't be able to exist. So if you take it literally, I mean, I don't think we're meant to take it literally necessarily, but if you take it literally, Kedusha D'Sidra is a lifesaver. Now, what's interesting is if you go into look into the Shulchan Aruch, there is a halacha in the Shulchan Aruch which goes out of its way to say you should not leave the Beit Knesset until you have said Uva Letzion. And it's a bit of an odd thing to say that, really, because why would you say, you didn't say about Mincha, don't leave before you finish davening. Well, why would you think to leave before davening? He's stressing it in the Shulchan Aruch that you shouldn't leave because it's so important. It's an absolutely vital prayer according to this Gemara. Yes, Philip.
I didn't know that the people were, as you seem to describe it, quite ignorant of.
Very ignorant.
I mean, I know that the Christians were not encouraged to try and understand the Latin prayers that they heard whenever they went to church. They were discouraged to learn it. They weren't supposed to. But I didn't know that the Jews.
Okay, there's a difference here. You're mixing two things. You're right on both counts, but you're mixing two things up. You're right that the Christian clergy deliberately kept the populace ignorant, because their literacy was what set them apart and gave them their power. In the Jewish circles, you're right. We don't keep them ignorant. It was always encouraged for people to learn. The fact is, though, that they didn't, right? They didn't. People were ignorant. People didn't know how to read. Halavai, they would. That's the difference. The Christian clergy wanted them to be ignorant because it gave them their power. The Jewish clergy, as it were, wanted them to be learned, but the people didn't do it.
What about the Hasidim? What about the Baal Shem Tov?
They came because of the ignorance, not that they wanted to keep them ignorant. They came because of the ignorance. They couldn't read, they couldn't daven. So what happened?
So they came out with Ivdu Hashem B'Simcha.
So they said, Ivdu Hashem B'Simcha, and do it through the Rebbe. The original Hasidus of the Rebbe was that the Rebbe, as it were, took it on for them because they weren't capable. It was a b'diavad. It's not become a b'diavad now. It's become a lechatchila. But that was the origin. Yes, Leslie.
I learned that Letzion was actually put in because at the time the Greeks would not allow you to daven, and they wanted to say the Kedusha. So they actually wanted to get the Greeks not understanding what we were doing. So they put in Letzion through the Kedusha there. And consequently today, I thought, because you're supposed to ideally try and keep this quiet, when you, as the Tefilah say, Hashem Yimloch L'Olam V'Oed, you actually, although everyone's shouting out Kadosh, Kadosh, and Baruch Kadosh, that Hashem Yimloch L'Olam V'Oed, you actually just say, the Tefilah says it himself.
Okay, I think there's a couple of things that are slightly awry in that. It's mostly correct.
Right.
Did you all hear that, by the way, what Leslie said?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me try and sort of get that 100% correct. One of the ideas, okay, so we've said, let's just take a step back. We've said that Letzion is about learning and about everybody learning, okay? Fine. Why choose Kedusha? Why choose Kadosh, 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 Baruch Kavod Hashem Mimkomo, Hashem Yimloch L'Olam V'Oed? Why not choose Bereshis Bara Elokim, right? Answer, something to do with what you were saying. There was a time when the Greeks or the Romans, whoever they were, that were giving us a hard time at the time, probably the Romans, they didn't allow us to say Kedusha. Why? Because they didn't believe that we should say our God was holy. So we weren't allowed to say Kedusha. When do we say Kedusha? In the middle of Shemona Esrei. So they banned it. So they Greeks or Romans, whoever they were, put guards in the shul to make sure that Kedusha wasn't said. Comes the end of Shemona Esrei, Kedusha's not said. Guards say, right, okay, I'm done, I'm off. Guards go because they've done the job. They've made sure they know Kedusha comes in the middle of, So then they bring out a Letzion, and it's an opportunity. Guards have gone. It's an opportunity that they would say Kedusha. One sec. If the guards don't go, you're in trouble, aren't you? So then we come to the silent bits. Now there are some people that say you shouldn't say the Aramaic bits out loud.
Right.
Why? Because the Romans understood Aramaic, and so if you were to say those bits out loud, not the Hashem Yimloch L'Olam V'Oed,
the bit before,
but the one after it, Hashem Malchutei Ka'em Li'Olam Li'Olmei Al Maya, which is Aramaic, and the bit that I just read out before, Kadish Mishmei Merala, all the translation, they would know that you were saying that, so you say that quietly. You can say Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh if you like, because they don't really understand that. So
is that the reason, Johnny? Is that the reason they say on Shabbat, they say Letzion for Mincha?
No, I'll answer that question in a minute, Johnny.
They don't say it in the morning.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
answer the question in a minute. Remind me to come back to it because I don't want to lose my train of thought.
Okay.
Here.
Sorry.
So we've got a Kedusha D'Sidra, which according to the Gemara is really important. Why is it important? The actual content is not that important. It's the fact that everybody is learning, and not just the scholars, but everybody is learning. All the people are learning, and Rashi uses the word because everybody is learning. It's chaviv. What does chaviv mean?
Sweet.
Sweet, not
Yeah.
sweet. It means it's dear.
Dear,
Right?
yeah.
It's dear.
Habibi.
Habib, yeah, it's dear to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were. Why? Because everybody's learning. So it seems that this Kedusha D'Sidra is but special. It's special because all of Israel is learning, the learned and the ignorant, and this explains why the translation of the verses is part of the recitation. Now, I always knew that second story, that it was, you say it quietly. And I've got an aversion to saying things in Aramaic. Why? Because I don't see the point. The whole point of saying it in Aramaic is that we should understand it. And I understand it less than the Hebrew. So, Yukam Purkon, Bruchshema. I know somebody, I won't mention the name who it is. Some of us all know him, who doesn't say anything in Aramaic. Any of the tefillahs in Aramaic don't say it. Right? Bruchshema, Yukam Purkon, any of those Aramaic things. Why? Because what's the point of saying something in Aramaic? As well say it in Greek or Egyptian or Chinese, right? We don't understand it. Who understands Brik Shemay without,
Blessed be his name.
without first translating it into Hebrew and then translating it into English? What's the point, right? So I've got a bit of an aversion to it, but I now realize, since I'm prepared for this shiur, that's wrong. I should say it because it's part of the recitation. Maybe I should say it in English rather than in Aramaic. Probably true. As it so happens, I actually understand what the Hebrew words mean. So perhaps I don't need to say it at all. But it's become part of the recitation because we're meant to understand this. It's really important that we understand it because we're not actually saying it as a Kedusha. When we say Kedusha in the middle of the Shemona Esrei, what we're doing, we're praising Hashem. This is not about praising Hashem. This is about learning Torah. And it could be Bereshis Bara Elokim if you wanted it to be, right? It would do the job just as well in terms of Kedusha D'Sidra, in terms of actually the learning bit. It was made into Kedusha for the reason that Leslie said, because it's an opportunity to get one over the stupid goyim who've left at the end of Shemona Esrei thinking that we're finished, right? So Rashi is saying that this is not just actually a nice afterthought. It's actually the whole main purpose of saying this is the Aramaic, right? It's to understand it. And he writes a very nice sentence here. He says, this is a chance to have a common experience of learning Torah of all Israel, even those who would normally be precluded by their lack of education. Okay? The Targum, the translation then, is essential to achieve the goal. So if you are somebody who doesn't understand Hebrew and doesn't understand Aramaic, you've actually not achieved the goal. If you just read of Letzion, you have to know what you've said. You have to read the English translation, which of course is why, shout out for Art Scroll here for me. It's not very common I do this, but the interlinear Art Scroll Siddur, where you've got each word with a translation underneath it, right, is brilliant for this because you read it and you see the translation right in front of you. Yeah, anybody ever used that Siddur?
Yeah, I find it.
It's not easy to daven from, generally speaking, because you have to keep on turning over the pages more than anything else. And if you're familiar with it, but I must tell you, if you are over familiar with the prayers, it's not a bad idea to use that Siddur because it slows you down and it makes you think about the prayers because it's there in front of you and you can't help but read it. So it's a shout out for Art Scroll. I've got to give credit where it's due. Can't be always having a go at them. Right. So that's the Sidra. Now, so we're basically after morning prayer. The end of the day, Tefilah ends with Tachanun. That's the truth. So what we're doing now is an answer to the question, what do we do? How do we live when we're finished Tefilah? Tachanun is the end of Tefilah. So you finish Tefilah and you go out through the door. What? That's the end of your relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu until Mincha? Leave him behind? Don't have anything to do with him until Mincha? No. Ashrei Letzion is coming to teach you that actually what you need to do is to transition from standing in front of a Kodesh Baruch Hu into your, as it were, everyday life. And part of that transition is to take the Torah with you. That's the idea of this Kedusha D'Sidra. It's a transition from Kodesh to Chol. Kodesh is all about davening here, Kedusha, Tefilah. Chol is what we do after we've left. This is the transition. So Ashrei Letzion is the transition. And I think we can, I don't know about you, I think I can relate to that sort of idea that, you know, you're on a peak at the end of your Tefilah. If you've done it properly, your end of your Tefilah, you've done your Tachanun properly. We went through Tachanun carefully. It's a heartfelt, individual prayer. Remember, it's all in the first person singular. At the end of that, you know, if you've done it properly, you should be a bit like a shmata, right? And you're at a peak there. Your nerves are jangling, and you've been in the presence of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And this is he describes it, the title of his description to this. I'm not even sure how to pronounce this word. I think it's Segue, S-E-G-U-E.
S-E-G-U-E.
Segue. It morphs into
Segue, he calls it a Segue.
Segue.
Segue, is that how you say it? Segue then away from Tefilah, however you say that word. I know what it means. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. It means a gradual moving away from Tefilah, and it's a nice description of it. So after prayer, you engage in this little bit of learning, and then when you've finished your learning, then you've got something to take with you, as it were. The experience of standing before a Kodesh Baruch Hu is finished, and you've got your clear demarcation between inside and outside, but you're taking with you that bit of learning. And that is why I think clearly this Gemara is not to be taken literally, that if everybody says
anybody reading that Gemara,
Kedusha D'Sidra, right, means that you're keeping the world going. What it means is if you do your bit of learning and you take that bit of learning with you, your days won't be cursed, right? You'll have some brocha in your day, right? Because you'll take it with you. I don't know about you. If you learn something at the end of davening, you think, "Wow, I never knew that. That's really interesting," right? You go out with a little, you know, "Oh, that's good. Enjoyed that. That's fine." Like today, I was privileged to do this, to do the kollel here for Mendel. Mendel's away. He asked me to do it. So I learned with the guys here from 9 o'clock till 12.
oh,
It was fabulous. Absolutely loved it. I will rent out, you know, to be honest, I wasn't really looking forward to it because it took quite a lot of preparation, and it was 3 Sforim that they were doing that, you know, I hadn't, well, one was a Gemara that I'd learned a long time ago. The other 2 Sforim I hadn't learned. So I had to do a lot of preparation. I could do without it, really. But I came out of it with a real spring in my step because I'd really enjoyed preparing for it. I'd enjoyed learning it. I'd enjoyed teaching it. And the guys around the table had enjoyed learning. And that gives you a real spring in your step. And that is what this is about. If you do that, Kedusha D'Sidra, as it's meant to be done, in other words, you do a bit of learning and you take it with you, improves your day.
gives you a Philip with an F.
Gives you a Philip with an F. Gives you a Philip, as long as you don't get a Philip with a P, you're all right. Right? He gives you a Philip with an F. And it's you understand now what that Gemara means. It doesn't mean it literally. You know, it's silly to mean it literally. What it means is this is a way to take your Tefilah and to segue or Segue, whatever that word what is, away from that Tefilah and into your everyday life. It's that transition between Kodesh and Chol. And he says again like this very nicely. Listen to what he writes. He says there's a clear demarcation between inside and outside, between sitting in the house of God all the days of my life, Ashrei Yoshvei Veisecha, right? And living in the world of man, of trials and tribulations, of mundane values, successes and failures, which is why those people who are in so-called full-time learning are not in the real world, right? They've not got the trials and tribulations of everyday life, right? You and I have got those trials and tribulations in order to support them so that they can sit and fetch bunk all day long, right? We've got this separation between inside and outside. 3 steps backwards after the Tefilah, and you're outside. But the Torah, he says, does not include that same wall of demarcation. There's no mechitza between the world of Torah and the secular world if you take the Torah with you. When you finish learning, the Torah accompanies you because it's part of you. In other words, Torah, even though it is the words of the living God and an intimate encounter with him, is also part of the world. So that's why it is chaviv. So the idea of the Kedusha D'Sidra is this idea of learning a little bit and taking it with you through the door. All right. Now, what's interesting is, what's all the other stuff? Right. I've explained to you what the Kedusha bit is. What about all those other bits before that comes before? Letzion, and what about all the other stuff at the end that ends in Hashem Chafetz Leman Sidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir? If it's just the learning, why don't we do that? What's all that extra bit about? Well, interesting, because in the Gaonic Siddur of Rev Amram Gaon, lived in the 10th century, one of the oldest Siddurim that we have, the prayer concludes at the end of the Kedusha. The end of the Kedusha D'Sidra. Right? So after you've said Hashem Yimloch Le'olam V'ed and you've said the Aramaic bit or
So you
English
don't say
bit,
Oleinu.
no. That particular prayer ends.
Ah.
We don't have all the other bits at the end. Okay? In the Siddur of Reb Sadia Gaon, only the Kedusha is found. But today, in all Siddurim, this is followed by a collection of verses. And what's it about? What's it all about? What are all those verses? Let's have a look at them.
All different bits of Tehillim, aren't they?
All in bits and bobs from all over the place, right? If you
It
look,
is important, John. I was thinking of it. I've just been looking it up. On Yom Kippur, we don't say Ashrei for Mincha. We say Ashrei over Letzion for Nila. I thought it was quite important.
The reason for that is that, unlike in our place,
Shows how important it is.
if you daven in a place like Gateshead Yeshiva or Lakewood Yeshiva, you will go straight.
Island Yeshiva.
You go straight from Musaf into Mincha.
Yeah.
So you don't need Ashrei because Ashrei is the introduction.
Yeah.
So they and because you've got to do a third Ashrei, they stick it in front of Ne'ilah. But that's why you don't say Ashrei at Mincha in on Yom Kippur, because you're meant to have just finished Musaf. Okay, let's go back to all these things after the Kedusha D'Sidra. What have we got here?
Because we finish during the week, you could finish Shachrit at a certain time, and then it becomes time for Mincha, and don't say Ashrei.
Well, yeah, if you were to carry on your Tefilah all the way through, then that might be the case.
Oh.
Look at all these psukim here that we've got here. I don't know, just randomly. Baruch hu Elokeinu shebaranu lichvodo. Blessed are you, our God, who created us for his glory. V'hivdilanu min hatoim, and separated us from those who make mistakes. V'natan lanu torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Hu yiftach libenu b'toratal. May he open up our hearts to his Torah.
May he will.
Okay, hu yiftach means it's a may he. He will, or he may he. That's how. But yasem b'libenu avatov yiratov alotzot ritzono. He should put the love in our hearts and the fear of him to do his will and to serve him with a full heart. Leman lo nigala rik v'lo nenei bela. In order that our whole lives should not be empty and futile. So all of these psukim. Next one. Yehi ratzon milafanecha adonai Eloheinu v'le'eretzenu. May it be your will. What? Shenishmor chukecha ba'olam hazeh. That we should keep your commands.
In this
I'll
world.
get some water for it.
That's why I just wanted my.
V'niska, v'nichya, v'nira shtova uvracha. Neyimot Mashiach. And it's all prayers about our connection to Hashem and the Torah. So all of these extras are all about faith. They're all about trust and faith in Hashem. And all of these things were extra add-ons after the Kedusha. As I said before, the original Kedusha D'Sidra, as found in the Sidra of Rasad Gaon, finishes at the end of the Kedusha D'Sidra. And it's all about faith in God. And he writes here, he says, this now makes sense. We're going out into the world, leaving the safety of the sanctuary. What's a sanctuary?
Synagogue.
Right?
Synagogue.
How do we use that English word, sanctuary? A safe haven, right? We use that, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. We're leaving that safe haven of our base Knesset, our connection with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and we're going out into that big, harsh, wide world out there. We're on the bridge of leaving behind the walls of the house of God, having completed our prayer. To do so, he says, we must arm ourselves with the attribute of faith and trust, which is why those things were added on in the end. And he says here, in the Sephardic rite, and he says in some Ashkenazic Sidurim as well, there is an end of it, the end of a Letzion, state, we don't have it in our Sidur, Chizku va'ametz levavchem, Chizku, strengthen yourselves, va'ametz levavchem,
and let your heart be brave.
And make your heart brave.
Yeah.
Kol hamyachalim la. All of those
Who wish you.
who wish it.
Yeah.
In other words, this is our hope, is that we will be strengthened in our Torah. So Ashrei, really nice idea of Rabbi Sachs is there, that if Kedusha D'Sidra, which is the main part of this unit, is the learning, then it makes sense. If we've got to put an Ashrei in, this is a good place to put it in, because Ashrei Yoshvei V'Techa. Happy is a man who sits in the house. Yoshvei, what's the same root as Yoshvei?
Yes.
Yeshiva. Yeshiva.
Yeshiva,
Right.
yeah.
What do they do in yeshiva?
Learn.
No, they sit.
They sit and collect bunk, right? They yeshiva, so that's what they do.
Sit and fight for us.
Huh?
They sit and fight for us.
Sit and fight for us. Yes, don't get me started, Johnny. Right. So that's Letzion. That's okay. So we've mentioned Ashrei, but what haven't we mentioned? We haven't mentioned Lamnat Tzech.
Yeah.
What's all that about? What's all that about? So Lamnat.
Part of the transition where we're asking God to protect us from what we're going to see in the big.
Okay, that makes sense, doesn't it? If you look at the translation of Lamnat Tzech, what is Lamnat Tzech all about? It's a Tehillim for a start. It's part of it. It's Tehillim chapter 20. Look at the end of it. Eilev harechev ve'eilev hasusim. These with chariots and these with horses. What does that mean? It means the goyim, eile, them, varechev, they put their faith in armaments. What's a rechev? Equivalent today of a rechev?
Chariot.
A tank. What is the Israeli tank called?
Merkava.
Merkava. What's the root of Merkava? Rechev. Right? My son, who was in tanks, drove a Merkava 2. We're now on Merkava 4, I think.
Yeah, you notice the buses are also code that as well.
Yeah, because you're right.
They're driven by tank drivers.
Yeah. So they, in other words, other people, they put their trust in tanks and susim. What's the equivalent of susim? Are horses. What's the equivalent of horses? Infantry, right? Armory. V'anachnu, but us, b'shem Hashem Elokeinu nazkir. We mention the name of Hashem. In other words,
It says here we call on the name.
we call, yeah. Nazkir is to mention. Ani mazkir, I mention, right? Hema, they, karu, bend down, v'nafalu, and fall. V'anachnu, but us, kamnu, we get up, v'nit odad, and we are encouraged. L'oded means to encourage somebody. Okay, nit oded,
we will be encouraged.
We will be encouraged. Yeah. So they're on their knees. Right, Karu, they're on the knees and they're fallen. Why? Because they relied only on the military. Us, on the other hand, didn't rely only on the military, we also mention and rely on the name of Hashem, and we, Kamnu, have been upright and are encouraged. Adonai, Hoshia, Hashem, save us, the Savior, Hamelech, Ya'anenu, the King
Will answer us
will answer us, B'yom Kor'enu,
on the day
on
we
the day
ask for
that
him.
we call
For
on him.
Yeah.
So that makes very good sense what Frank said. That this, why did they choose this particular Tehillim? Because we're about to go out into battle. Every day is a battle in the outside world, which is why the people who are in the Kotlei Yeshiva don't want to leave it, because they know it's a battle. It's easy to be dead from when you sat all day long in Gateshead or Lakewood.
Does it mean they shouldn't actually say that?
Or Coney Island.
I don't know about that.
We don't, certain days we don't say it.
Yeah,
do we?
Some ways you
Yeah,
don't say
also-
it.
Is that because it's something to do with sacrifices or something?
Maybe because it answers the question. On those days, we're not going out and fighting. We're having
I'm sorry, it's to do with sacrifices in the temple or something.
Why don't we say certain days on that
I
day?
think that is possibly something else. That's Mizmor Soda, I think.
Don't know why we don't say it. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
For that reason, it's not an every. That's related to every
day, and these are not
These
every
are not every
days.
days.
These are special days.
Special days when we're not
Could
when we're
be.
not going out to battle.
Could
when
be.
we're-
There's obviously
days,
something. If you look at the days we
Happy
don't
days.
say it, there's a sort of parallel to Tachanun.
Yeah.
It's not entirely parallel. There's a sort of parallel to Tachanun. Now, why don't we say Tachanun on those days? Because those days are not suitable for crying your eyes out and having your head down like that and clopping and baying and and carrying on with yourself. This maybe is the same idea, that this Tehillim is about going into
Because you don't say it on Tisha B'Av though, Johnny. You can cry on Tisha B'Av.
Yeah, but Tisha B'Av's different. We don't say it on Tisha B'Av because Tisha B'Av will, in the future, be a Yom Tov
Okay.
called a Moed.
Maybe because there are actually other Jewish events or religious events during the course of the coming day that will override the secular things that we're going out to do.
May well
Whether
be.
it's a
I can't. I need to look it up. I never thought to look it up. There must be a reason, but given the days that we don't say it on, I feel that there must be some connection with happiness and celebration.
I think it's just other things that will intrude into the life that remind us where we are, where we've come from.
And these on the happy days, we don't need this kind of intrusion.
2 of the days are Yom Ha'atzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim, so they're happy days.
Right.
I mean, you wouldn't say it in a Beit Hafel either, because
But that's a different reason.
you're not going out.
Yeah, but there's a different reason for not saying Tachanun in a Beit Hafel. You don't say Tachanun in a Beit Hafel because it's not a place where you want to have din, and they've got enough Soros in a Beit Hafel. They don't need you to
But here
add
it's
it here.
because the Avelim are not actually.
Yeah,
going out
that would fit
into-
as well. So there we go. That was a little trip down Letzion and Ashrei, known as Kedusha D'Sidra, which we've seen many, many times in the Sidra and past our eyes and not taken any note of it. We have got left to do for Shacharit just Aleinu, really. Shir Shel Yom, Aleinu Shir Shel Yom. And then,
we do Ein King.
okay, so Korbanot. Nusach Ashkenaz
They don't do it.
is not to do Korbanot after Davening.
Yeah.
After this. Nusach Sfar, they do it. It has become
About the Ketoris, though.
it's about the Korbanot and the Ketoret. It has become sort of adopted
I've been in Ashkenaz,
in-
but here where they've
in
done-
Israel.
Yeah.
It's become sort of adopted by default almost in some Ashkenaz communities in Israel to say Pitum HaKetoret, and
we kind of say it on Shabbos. We say
we do say it in Shabbos.
we don't say the full.
No,
we
but
go-
we say
no,
Pitum HaKetoret after Ein Kilakenu on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Say Ein Kilakenu, and then we say
Yeah.
Pitum HaKetoret
Yeah.
on Shabbos.
Before you say Kaddish D'Rabbanan.
It's become some of the his dad's let him out.
I've already gone by then.
Some Ashkenaz communities have adopted it here in Israel. I don't know that any Ashkenaz communities in Chutz Haaretz that say it, but the Sephardi communities do. But we're going to do Aleinu, and we'll do Shir Shel Yom, and then I want to go on to benching before we go on to the other things.
Oh, very good.
Just going back to, I think.
Yeah,
what I
you know, you were
raised
talking.
before
Sorry.
Is why don't we say Letzion on Shabbat?
Why don't we say, you mean
In morning, sorry.
in the morning? Why don't we say, because I suppose, because it's not going so much from Kodesh L'chol, is it? Number one, it's not going Kodesh L'chol. Number two, what do you do? What do you do on Shabbos afternoon when you get home after you've had your lunch and you've had a shlof? You learn, right? That's what you meant to do anyway. So it could be, it's not required. And that would fit in, actually. It would fit in. Because you what happens when you have a drosha after? By the way, the United Synagogue style drosha, which is before Musaf, is a fairly new innovation. If you go to most Hasidish shuls, they won't have a drosha at all on a Shabbos in the morning anyway. And those that do will have it when?
After the service.
After Musaf. And therefore you don't need your Kedusha D'Sidra.
Therefore what, Johnny?
Therefore you don't need your Kedusha D'Sidra because you're learning after Musaf. In Vine Street, when did the Rav do his drosha?
Before Mincha.
Before Mincha. Okay, did he do a drosha in the morning?
Yes.
Before Musaf?
Before Musaf.
Okay, before I said. So that's already become a bit sort of anglicized, right? But
even Reb Ripper did it before Musaf.
Where I davened in the Stiebel, which was a Vishnitzer Stiebel, we didn't have a drosha every Shabbos, and if we did have a drosha, it was after Musaf.
Yeah, the Osprey Stiebel. That's the same.
Same, yeah. Okay. Any questions before we?
No drosha.
No. Okay. Very good.
I stopped
Thank
and learned.
Shavuot Tov, everyone.
Before Leighton.
Shavuot Tov.
Thank you.
Shabbat Tov, Johnny. Thank you.